I'm Koios, the Rōnin BeatMaker, and welcome to Lounge Rōnin. All things, everything. And if you are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like button and ring that notification bell and subscribe. And on this episode, we're going to discuss Annunaki Part 2. Now, if you haven't checked out Part 1, no worries. All good. I highly recommend after this episode you check out Part 1. But we're going to be discussing the Annunaki. Now, I don't know how familiar everyone is with the Annunaki, but if you know anything about Alexander Sitchin or Eric Van Doneman, then you are aware that of the astronaut theory and a lot of their work and books and interviews and what have you of them discussing the ancient astronauts theory and the idea that humanity was created by the Anunnaki to essentially mine gold on Earth so that the Anunnaki could take said gold back to their planet. It deals with Enki and Enlil and many of the different religious Bibles and texts, as well as stories, depict these individuals in many different forms and aspects. So that's essentially what we're going to be talking about today in regards to the Anunnaki. Now I see we got some people in the live stream. Much love over on Rumble. Much love over on YouTube. Hit that like button. But without further ado, let's get into it. Okay. Well, that's the wrong link. I apologize. Give me 1 minute. That was from last week's live stream. If you're into giants, I highly recommend you check out my 2-part series where I discuss mainstream academia and the lost race of giants. Good stuff. Very intriguing. A little dense, but good. Okay, here we go. This article was updated November 16th, 2017. It was written by Jason and Sarah. If you were here for part 1, then you know we read multiple articles by these authors. Annunaki Revealed. Finding the Nephilim in Myths, Giants Among Men. Part 2. Central to ancient astronaut theory and author Zachariah Sitchin's narrative is a group of mythic beings known as the Anunnaki, whom he claimed crossed their DNA with that of Homo erectus in order to create mankind, for the purpose of using humans as slaves to mine gold and other minerals. Today, these Anunnaki are often portrayed as the equivalent of the Old Testament creator god. But what does a cuneiform corpus actually say about the Anunnaki and other mythic beings? How does the version of these beings and their activities presented in ancient astronaut media compare with how they were truly represented in the ancient world? Here we have a illustration of a Babylonian representation of the national god Marduk, who was envisioned as a prominent member of the Anunnaki. He's the son of Enlil, I believe. Check out yesterday's live stream where I discussed Queen Kubaba, who was the first queen of Mesopotamia, as well as the first and only queen on the Sumerian kings list. So I highly recommend you check that out after you watch part 1 of this series, and then you head over and check out that one. So, and something I like to always keep in mind in regards to discussing and talking about this information is that, I love this saying from a TV show. There's always a bit of truth in legends, and I'm one of those people who believes that as more archaeological exploration and excavations are done, the more we learn about many of the biblical stories and events turn out to be true. One of the ones I love to bring up as an example of something that was, told as a legend but became true is the Battle of Troy, and how they ended up finding a portion of the wall of Troy. So, a lot of these stories, and I discussed heavily about this on yesterday's live stream, that there really is a lot of truth in these myths and legends. And the more we as individuals do research, and the more professors and archaeologists and anthropologists continue to do their works and what have you, more and more of these myths and legends are becoming true. It's getting to the point where it's beginning to blur the lines of how much of our ancient past are we really being misled about, and how much of it is actually truth, but the truth, conflicts and contradicts the mainstream narrative. And those of us who are listening are well aware of the propaganda machine that has manipulated our history to such an extent that, we don't even know what's true or what's not true. You have to actually do your own research and look for individuals who will present to you the actual facts without their own biases. But that's enough of a Rōnin rant. Let's get back to the article. Okay. Mount Hermon is located at the southern end of the Anti-Lebanon mountain range. Straddling the borders of Syria and Lebanon, Hermon's highest peak reaches 9,232 feet. Gilgamesh was renowned in the ancient world for obtaining knowledge from the pre-flood or antediluvian world, as stated by the Urgut Epic of Gilgamesh, lines 5 and 9. And I did do a series, a two-parter discussing the post-dynastic races of the Great Floods that have been documented and described in various cultures throughout the world. So I highly recommend add that to your watch list as well. Quote, "He explored everywhere the seats of power. He knew the totality of wisdom about all things. He who traveled the distant road to utter Napsita, who crossed the ocean, the wide sea as far as the sunrise. He brought back tidings from the antediluvian age." End quote. And that is from the Epic of Gilgamesh. These passages bring the full circle, while Lempinski's interpretation of the old Babylonian version of the Gilgamesh epic, where the ancient king journeyed to Mount Hermon, abode of the Anunnaki. Gilgamesh the Giant. The concept of ancient knowledge from the pre-flood world is actually inherent in many Eastern traditions. For example, there is a similar story in the apocryphal book of Jubilees about Canaan, the son of the biblical Ariphax. Quote, "And the son grew, and his father taught him writing, and he went to seek for himself a place where he might seize for himself a city. And he found a writing which former generations had carved on the rock. And he read what was thereon, and he transcribed it and sinned owning to it. And for it contained the teachings of the watchers, in accordance with which they used to observe the omens of the sun and moon and stars in all the signs of heaven. And he wrote it down and said nothing regarding it, for he was afraid to speak to Noah, about at least he should be angry with him on account of it." End quote. Jubilees 8, 1 through 5. Interestingly, there are several ancient sources that suggest that Gilgamesh himself was half god or semi-divine being of gigantic stature, according to the Sumerian kings list. Gilgamesh was the fifth king of Uruk, who reigned sometime between 2800 and 2600 BC. While there are traditions considering the father of Gilgamesh to be King Lugalbanda, the Sumerian king list states that his true father was Ilu Spirit, a high priest of Kulaba, and he is described in the epic as 2/3 god. Sounds very, you think about in the United States during the slavery age, 2/3 human, 2/3 God. That's a very interesting, I just kind of picked up on that. And it kind of makes you wonder if the founding fathers in their mind perceived themselves to be 2/3 of gods and people of white descent, and looked at people of dark descent as 2/3 human. You look at many of the stories within Gilgamesh, and you look at many of these sons and the demigods. Many of them are part human and part god. So there's just something there to keep in mind about in regards to how many of the elites throughout the world in history will use many of these ancient stories and teachings and verses and implement it into their own agendas and rituals. You see that happening everywhere. If you are not, it would be foolish to think that there are no ritualistic practices going on by the elites in regards to what is going on in the Middle East at the moment. So, these ideas of being two-third human or two-third gods, many of these elites and individuals, they consider themselves descendants from certain gods or deities or even demons. It's quite alarming to think. I continue. Enough of a Rōnin rant. And here we have a statue of Gilgamesh with his pet lion. I did do a bit of a deep dive on Gilgamesh. I think it's on, part 1 of the Annunaki Revealed. So if you're curious about him, feel free to check out that episode. Gilgamesh is believed to have attained victory over the king Kish, centralizing Urk's power, and tradition has him expanding to the city of Urk, including its temple, precinct, and walls, and several fragments of a 12th century BC copy of the Gilgamesh epic discovered at ancient Uruk. Gilgamesh is described as surpassing all other kings, renowned for bodily structure, and again as Gilgamesh renowned for body structure, hero born in Urk, budding wild bull, lines 18 to 19. Lines 34 to 36 of the Uruk Gilgamesh offer specific details on Gilgamesh's size. 11 cubits was his height, 4 cubits the width of his chest, a triple cubit his foot, and reed length his legs. According to these measurements, Gilgamesh would have stood between 16 and 18 feet tall, 4.8 to 5.4 meters tall. In connection to Gilgamesh being a giant, the fragmentary Book of Giants from the Dead Sea Scrolls names several Nephilim giants as Oya, Mawe, Haya, and Gilgamesh. And here we have a carving of Gilgamesh, the king hero from the city of Urk, battling the bull of heavens. Now, before we continue, just really quickly say I have several episodes and live streams discussing giants. I'm a big fan of the giants. There is archaeological evidence to prove that they existed in North America. So I've done several videos on them. I've done a lot of them. So I highly recommend, if that's something that you're really into, check out my giant live stream series. Alrighty. Giants reigning on Mount Hermon. Returning to the subject of Mount Hermon, Gilgamesh is not the only ancient giant directly associated with this prominent locale. Several Old Testament books, the Book of Numbers, Deuteronomy, the Book of Joshua, record the battle of Moses and the Israelites against Og, an Amorite king of Bashan. In Deuteronomy 3:11, Og is described as the remnant of giants, and his bed, or sarcophagus, is measured as 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide, meaning that Og himself may have been 12 or 13 feet high, approximately 4 meters tall. In Joshua 4:5, it is revealed that Og reigned in Mount Hermon and Sekla, and in Bashan, a region which would include the slopes of Mount Hermon and the Golan Heights. And we know right now that area right now is seeing quite the contention. Entities of the underworld. Still, another factor connecting the Anunnaki with the story of the Watchers and their offspring is their status as underworld beings. In Mesopotamia cycles, the Anunnaki are frequently depicted as fates, or judges of the dead, who occupy the subterranean realm or function as spirits of the earth. In tablets discovered at Nippur I'm hungry. In tablets discovered at Nippur from around 2000 BC, the Anunnaki are the seven judges, underworld entities that accompany Ereshkigal, queen of the subterranean realm. When Ishtar descends and is brought before the assembly, they fasten their eyes of death upon her, causing her to perish. And here we have an early 19th century drawing of a statuette of Hecate, whom Ereshkigal was syncretized. Cast down into hell. The mountain abode of the Canaanite god El is frequently associated with secret or hidden natural springs and underground rivers. Lipinski associates these connotations with the sources of the Jordan River, one of which is the spring Abanas, originating at the foot of Mount Hermon. He furthermore elaborates that the mountain was considered in ancient times to cover one of the outlets of the deep, or ocean, from which came the waters of the flood, an eruption of the subterranean ocean on which the earth was believed to rest. In 1 Enoch, God commands the archangel Michael to go, bind Semjaza and his associates who have united themselves with women, bind them fast for 70 generations in valleys of the earth. 1 Enoch 10:11-12. While Raphael is commanded, bind Azalel, hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness. Make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudal, and cast him therein. 1 Enoch 10:4. Here we have a carving of ancient Hittite relief carving from Zalukaya, a sanctuary at Hattusa, depicting 12 gods of the underworld whom the Hittites identify as the Mesopotamian Anunnaki. There are also references to the fate of the Watchers in the New Testament books, including 2 Peter, which states, God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness. 2 Peter 2-4. The word translated as hell in this verse is actually the Greek Tartarus, referencing the deepest underworld of Greek mythology, the prison of the Titans. Not only were the Titans giants, but like the Anunnaki, they were the offspring of an earth goddess Gaia and the sky deity Uranus. Some scholars consider it likely that the Greek mythos was largely based on the older Eastern mythologies. The same concept is repeated again in the book of Jude, verse 6, which mentions, the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness. So here we have a drawing, one of the giant Titans, Atlas, who was punished to bear the heavens on his shoulders for all of time. The true identity of the Anunnaki. It is widely known that the archetypal myth cycles of the Mesopotamian and Near Eastern traditions share a common origin, and that the subjects of these cycles also appear in the biblical, extra-biblical, and even Quranic texts. The purpose of this article is to identify the specific mythical concept behind the Anunnaki in the ancient world. Contrary to much of the popular literature and other media of today, the evidence recorded by the academic research of scholars and comparative study of the actual cuneiform and other ancient texts indicate that the true identity of the Anunnaki is to be found in Eastern tradition of a group of half-gods, spawned by crossbreeding between divine beings and mortal females at Mount Hermon in the anti-Lebanon mountain range. These beings are often associated with knowledge from the world before a great deluge, and were later assigned roles in the underworld. This would suggest that rather than making the Anunnaki the equivalent of Elohim, who created man in the book of Genesis, they should more properly be compared to the Nephilim and the fallen angels described in Genesis chapter 6, 1 Enoch, and the other extra-biblical texts. So, where I agree with what the authors of this article are saying. I do agree with them to an extent. But like I was saying earlier, many of these stories and these myths are becoming true. And, you have to look at the various tablets and, I think, to me personally, this is my own feeling and speculation. I personally feel that they're kind of trying to downplay some of the more exciting aspects and avenues in regards to the Anunnaki. And I think mostly it's because they don't want to be considered more of a conspiracy theorist in regards to who the Anunnaki are. But for anyone who's listening, shout out to those over on Rumble and shout out to those over on YouTube. Make sure you hit that like button, please. You are realizing more and more that the conspiracy theories end up becoming conspiracy true. So with that being said, no matter what no matter what information we are given privy to when it comes to mainstream academia, we have to take it with a large grain of salt. Because we are now knowing and being made well aware of the fact that the mainstream academia is more than likely lying to us. While covering a lot of my information regarding the giants, and it relates to the Anunnaki, the Smithsonian has policies in place to destroy any archaeological evidence that confirms the existence of giants. And the Smithsonian is a branch of the federal government, and if you are aware, the federal government does not have the American people's best interests at hand. And that goes as well when it comes to our education and when it comes to the origins and our true history. The secret history that mainstream academia and the federal government and most of Western governments are very adamant to suppress. They don't want us to know the truth. They don't want people knowing that there was an entire culture called the Hopewell people who lived in North America that were giants with elongated skulls that lived throughout the Midwest. They don't want people knowing about the pyramids in North America. They don't want people knowing about the pyramids in China. Because if you were to find out that there are pyramids in China, if you were to find out that the pyramids in China are larger than the pyramids in Egypt, if you were to find out that the pyramid in Greece predates the pyramids in Egypt by about 600 to 900 years, you'll start asking questions. And that's just, essentially what I'm trying to say here. Even when it comes to the Anunnaki, they're trying to downplay the whole concept and the idea of mining gold, but no one ever asked, like, well, where is all the gold going that many companies and cities or many governments take? Many of you probably remember those old commercials. We're buying gold. We're buying gold. Or the fact that down in South Africa, the corporations who do all the mining, they would give their demolition experts orders that if they found any ancient mines and any artifacts in them, to essentially bomb and enclose those old mines. Why? Why is that? Even when you look into information with the Aztecs, when the Spaniards came and they were asking them, well, what are you doing with all this gold? And they're like, well, we're waiting for the gods. It's for them. So this whole, you can look in many various ancient historical texts where they're all talking about saving gold for the gods, for the creators. So I know that it's kind of fantastical to think of the possibility that we were intelligently designed to mine gold and minerals and what have you. But I mean, is it out of the realm of possibility? I am firmly believe that we are of intelligent design. I don't, whether or not that intelligent design influence the, evolution on the planet, that's a whole nother conversation. But we are of intelligent design. There's no mistaking that. When you look at some of the ancient knowledge of many civilizations, they were well aware of DNA. Some of them were already doing research of that caliber. So we can't pretend and act as if we were just created from cells and a big bang and all this fun jazz, especially when, they have found nuclear explosions on Mars, which have the exact same type of data and explosions that you would see during the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So who nuked Mars? The speculations of the massive asteroid belt around our solar system used to be a planet. Or what about the fact that there is documented ancient text describing a time before the moon? So we have to take into consideration all of this knowledge and text and realize that there is obviously some level and kernel of truth to it, especially if there's consistencies in the writing. Why is it that there are flood stories everywhere? In Hindu mythology and text, they have a flood story, and the guy's name is Manu. It's not Noah, but it's Manu. It's the same story. The exact same story. Why is it when the priests were over in South America and they were stunned to find out that the creation story and the flood story that they were reading in the Aztecs predated theirs? Why is it that there's countless texts talking about pre-Diluvian races of beings? And that in many ways you could speculate that the Hopewell people, the giants of North America, were part of that pre-Diluvian race. I mean, it's all of this stuff is right there in front of us to read and interpret. Why is it that when was it Herodotus? No, Solon. When Solon went and hung out with the Egyptian priests, they were telling him about how they used to go over to North America. That they used to island hop their way to North America. That they have that in their type their library. And why is it that there is confirmed stories of evidence of Egyptian texts, Egyptian treasures in the Grand Canyon? So you have Solon, who's speaking and hanging out with the priests down in Egypt. They're telling him, "Hey, we used to go to North America. You know, the Hippocrates, he went and studied medicine at the temple of Amu-Hotep in Egypt. So if you want to credit anyone with the creation of modern medicine, it was in Africa. It was the Africans. But no one's going to tell you that. No one's going to tell you that calculus was already discovered in India by a man named Bravagata hundreds of years prior to the German mathematician who they credit as the father of calculus when he didn't even discover calculus. When in fact, calculus was already discovered by the Sumerians. So much of our knowledge, our math, our technology, our medical technology, all of this stuff, it's not like new ideas. It's just being rediscovered. We have not rediscovered the technology, or maybe we have, and they're just keeping it from us, on how to rebuild many of the megalithic structures that we cannot design today. So it's just it's foolish to look at stories of the Anunnaki, to look at the stories of the Hopewell giants of North America, to look at any of this stuff and act as if there isn't a level of truth to it. When part of the reason why you may not be aware of the truth to it is because it's being purposely suppressed from you by mainstream media, by mainstream academia, by the federal government, by corporations. So we don't know. We're not privy to the truth because in their eyes, we're not deemed worthy of knowing the truth. Why is it that why can't we in our history books just talk about the fact that, yeah, there used to be giants that lived in North America. It is what it is. It happened. Here are their bones. Here are some of their pottery. Here are the mounds throughout North America where many of their are actually their grave sites. Here are the designs of what their entire cities used to look like. Why? Why can't we do that? Why can't we have those conversations? They don't want us to utilize the potentiality of the truth. They don't want us to utilize the potentiality of our history, the true history. So we're constantly suppressed. We're constantly manipulated. We're constantly dumbed down. We're constantly propagandized. And it's a shame. It's unethical and it's immoral. And and I'm not here to tell you guys how to think or how to feel. That's not why I'm here. All I'm saying is that we as individuals, we need to start just doing our own research. We need to start listening to people who are honest with us, who are not giving us their bias. You need to step away from the mainstream media. You need to step away from social media. I mean, you look at what's going on right now in the Middle East. It's hard to tell what's real and what's not. And you're seeing that in real time. You see that in real time with our own history. I mean, if any of you guys remember when Graham Hancock came out with his Netflix series, Ancient Apocalypse, and he was banned from entering Egypt. He was banned from going to Serpent Mound in North America. They called him a white supremacist. even though he's married to an Indian woman and has mixed children with her. I mean, it's like, like what are we doing? Every day we have people like Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson, what have you, coming out, providing us the truth of the reality of our situation, of our ancient history, and they're ridiculed and they're demonized and they're harassed. Only all because they're speaking the truth. Because we live in an era now where the truth will get you in trouble, but the lies will get you a raise. All right? I'll repeat that. The truth will get you in trouble, but the lies will get you a raise. And you see that every single day. You know what? I'm going to tweet that out. I like that. Hold on a second, guys. I'm back. Sorry. I like that. But this is what I'm talking about. We are constantly bombarded with so many lies and misinformation, disinformation, to the point where you can't even believe your own eyes half the time. And that goes the same with our knowledge of our history. It's constantly being bombarded with lies and obfuscated, to the point where people are advocating and believing in lies when the truth is stranger than the lies. I mean, how often is it that, even with in regards to the Anunnaki and all of this stuff, is that they will demonize and ridicule and make fun of anybody who believes in like the astronaut theory, and so much so that they're kind of calling it a religion. And I mean, in my mind, right? So is it so if you are someone who believes in God, and let's just humor the idea that okay, well, if God is real, then God in and of itself is an alien, right? He's not human. He's omnipotent. He is not of this. So he is alien in our eyes. So if you're someone who believes in God, but you don't believe in aliens, I got news for you. You're technically praying and worshiping to an alien. Even if he doesn't have a physical form, he is outside of our plane and realm of existence. That is alien to us. And even with the atheists, they claim that they don't believe in anything, but they truly do. They believe in the state. They believe in the government. That is their religion. And that in and of itself, you're believing in something. You're believing in an institution. You're worshiping in an institution. How many people during the last 3 years or 4 years of the pandemic went from believing in God and faith into believing in the institution? They replaced God and faith with the institution. And you see that going on with our own history. They will constantly take our history and just totally bastardize it to the point where we don't even know what we're seeing anymore. And that's something that we need to really keep in mind. And the funny thing to me about it, right? The funny thing about it to me is, despite all of this, despite the fact that you have people out there who went from believing in faith in God to believing in the state, and then at the exact same time completely foregoing and giving up their humanity. I mean, this is part of what they do. This is how you erase the truth and you suppress history. And this is also how they end up, ridiculing myths and legends. And then when said myths and legends become true, they don't even acknowledge it. So, this is something that I think many of us out there need to be self-aware of and privy to. That we are constantly being manipulated. And you could even say that said manipulation and the powers to be, they're being controlled and manipulated by much higher powers. Maybe it is the Anunnakis. Who knows what it could be? It could be some demons. Who knows? Whether it's the Illuminati, the Freemasons, whatever groups you want to have it be. But the reality is that much of our ancient history is true. But they present it to us as lies, as fantastical ideas. And that is a damn shame. And it's unfortunate. But, I believe everyone who's been, who's listening and enjoys this content, you're aware of this. And you're privy to the truth. And you're more than willing to go out there and advocate for the truth. And advocate for freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of individuality. Because this is it. I'm gonna end it off here with a lovely quote from Hotep Jesus. I highly recommend you subscribe to his YouTube channel and follow him on Twitter. And he says, I quote, "The more you know, the less people can relate to your thoughts and opinions." Let me repeat that. The more you know, the less people can relate to your thoughts and opinions. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Rōnin. All things, everything. If you've made it this far, and if you enjoyed the show thus far, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe and ring that notification bell. And shout out to my Rumble viewers. Much love for listening in. Don't forget to hit that like button on your way out. Much love to YouTube. Much love to Twitch. Thank you guys for listening in and subscribing and hitting that like button. And until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.